Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Caroline Murphy, and I'm with Flow Live. We're going to start, and we're going to start. Sorry, a little nervous here. Africa represents a major opportunity for connected mobility, but operating across the continent means dealing with different network conditions, infrastructure, regulations, and borders. Today is not about listing what reasons Africa is difficult. It's about showing that the technology, the local knowledge, and partnerships needed to operate here already exist. Our panelists will paint a real life picture of what it means to operate IoT on this beautiful continent, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the endless potential. So, whether you're improving a fleet already operating in Africa or planning to enter the market, this conversation will show what needs to work across the device, the connectivity, the network, the platform, and support layers to keep all that data moving. Today's session will be about 60 minutes. We're going to keep 15 minutes at the end to have Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button there that says Q&A. Please feel free to drop your questions in there and we'll get to them at the end. If we don't, please include your email address and we'll go ahead and follow up with you after. So let's get started and let's introduce our panel. Francois from GoMetro.
Thanks, Caroline. Hey, everybody. My name is Francois Snyders. I head up the IoT department at GoMetro. If I were to describe us, I would say that we are a solutions company first. We make fleet management solutions driven by high resolution data. In layman's terms, I would describe us as the Panado of the mobility and ops sector, as we like to solve headaches for the operational people. We have a headquarter in London, operational headquarter, as well as an engineering and operations sector in Cape Town. We have two big business branches, the one being dedicated EV telematics data solution, running on 1,400 buses, 2,000 buses by the end of this year, where we publish roughly about 4 million data points per vehicle per day. This is battery analytics grade, battery analytics and data. And then for the African market, we have a telematics aggregation service called Bridge, currently running about 28,000 and assets, as well as 1,600 companies using our software. Over to you, Mindaugas.
Thank you, Francois. My name is Mindaugas Šiburkis, known as Mindy, to not break anyone's tongue. Today, I'm happy to represent my company, Teltonika Telematics, in front of you, where I like to call myself a 6-year marathon runner, 6 years African marathon runner, as I am employed within Teltonika already for 6 years and been working for all of those years with African region. Through those years running my marathon, I have covered various destinations. I have actually started in working with Nigeria, Ghana, then moved on to Tanzania, then Kenya, South Africa, and surrounding countries around it. As you may see in a share slide, Teltonika Telematics actually has more than 6 companies under its own umbrella. And as we like to call ourselves, we are the creators of IoT world. How do we do that? Why do we call ourselves like that? It's because we do actually manufacturing a IoT hardware under 5 different market segments, which first, telematics, second, networking solutions, third, EV charging, fourth, telemedicine, and fifth, security systems. As I mentioned, we are 6 companies under our umbrella because the 6th company is actually our manufacturing place, because everything what we do, what we sell is being manufactured within our manufacturing place in Vilnius, Lithuania. So also, talking about manufacturing itself, we do have a global presence around the world. We are based in more than 27 different countries. So we have operational offices in 27 different countries working, where we have more than 2,500 people working for Teltonica, for the clients, with the clients. As we're focusing now on Africa, it is worth to mention that we do have offices in Nairobi, Kenya, which was our very first office where we opened. Then we do have a operational office in Johannesburg, South Africa, which was our second office where we opened. And then we do have a third office in Casablanca, Morocco, which is our youngest brother from Africa under our presence. In our offices, local people are working for the local businesses, with the local businesses, with the local partners, and sharing the knowledge. And that matters a lot because being close to the customers means a lot here. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you. I'm Peter Walsh from Comms Cloud. We see ourselves as enablers of African IoT at scale, from Africa, built for Africa. And whilst we see Teltonica building the devices, Baobab bringing their Pan-African presence that's just growing and growing on top of the FlowLife technology stack that powers the core infrastructure from the SIM to the cloud. Our job is to make those layers behave as one managed service and to own it when something goes wrong. So our value proposition is to ensure that your fleet can cross any border, 5 borders, 10 borders, 50 borders on a single SIM, and the data just keeps moving. One SIM, all borders, no downtime.
Great. Sahan from Baobab.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for FlowLife for bringing together the partners from across the ecosystem. My name is Shahan. I look after IoT and partnerships at Baobab, which is the digital infrastructure arm of the MTN Group. We operate across 9 markets across the continent and are proud to play a role in connecting Africa's people, businesses, and economies through world-class digital infrastructure. Built on the rich tradition of MTN, a business that has spent decades connecting Africa. Today, Baobab is one of the key pillars of MTN's digital infrastructure strategy, focused on building the connectivity foundations that enable Africa's digital future. Through our several different platforms, IoT, voice, SMS, satellite, subsea cables, or over the 141,000 kilometers of proprietary cable across the continent. Baobab's role in the ecosystem is simple. It's to provide the connectivity foundation that enables devices, platforms, and fleet operators to maintain visibility as assets move across countries and transport corridors. We work with our partners across the value chain to make sure that the ecosystem works. It's not something one of us can do alone, and it's why we need partners across the continent to develop that ecosystem. As Baobab, we bring a deep understanding of African operating environments, strong relationships across the continent, and a commitment to building connectivity that reflects Africa's realities. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Now here's our slide. What I want you to notice on this slide, these aren't 5 companies doing the same job. Each one owns a part of the journey. GoMetro turns vehicle data into visibility and useful insights. Teltonica provides the telematics and hardware that capture it. Baobab provides the Pan-African network reach. Comms Cloud brings the different layers together and manages the service and support. And underneath it all, FlowLive orchestrates how devices connect, switch, and recover as they move between networks and across borders. The important point here is that the operator doesn't have to experience these as 5 separate layers. They just simply need their data to be there wherever their vehicle goes. So instead of just explaining this as a stack in theory, let's see what it looks like in real life. We're going to go to Francois and we're going to take it right to the truck.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, so I've been at GoMetro now for 4 years. I still remember my first day joining GoMetro. Our CEO is very enthusiastic about having different type of products and being different to the rest of the market. From our first day, our CEO Justin had a strong focus towards data-driven solutions and how we can unlock data, measure different fleet parameters that fleet owners would like to know, unlock that data and make it available through our software. So that led me to a rabbit hole of testing different devices. As the head of IoT, I had to test different devices and different SIM card solutions that could work for the African market. From my learnings and testings, I definitely learned a lot of things that don't work, a lot of systems that don't work, and that aren't optimized for African solutions. And eventually, I also found what does work. I had simple pain points like I had a frustration with the setup of most SIM providers only allowing data pooling. In Africa, you have vehicles on the road, off the road, using more data, using less data. Simple things like the RECA process, getting SIM cards activated, going to stand in the queue with my ID card to have SIM registered to my name. To be honest, I think there are still SIMs floating around South Africa on my name that I'm not aware of. That and things like manual top up, it was quite a headache. At the end of every month, if you don't set a reminder on your calendar, you don't have data on your SIMs. That's also a big headache. No signal visibility, uploading SIM cards on site was part of preparation, not having a clue what's going on that device, more just they install, close the box, and hope everything works. And the big thing for us is we couldn't cost projects. So having the capability to forecast amounts of data that a project will use, where it will be utilized, and being able to project that project based on what it will use, as I call it, a pay as you use or pay as you go system, was really something that I desired and something that works well with the devices that we want to use for vehicle applications. That's pretty much how the introduction to CommsCloud came about. I got to know Corey and Peter from CommsCloud quite well. If I can share a funny backstory, we one of the projects we worked on a few years ago was a tire pressure monitoring solution that we installed on one of our customers in Cape Town. It's just around the block from where our offices are. We developed the product. We did all of the bench testing we thought we needed to do, and we are so ready for this installation. We do the installation a couple of hours later. All of the data is calibrated. The data is running. We have our Autonica device, and we have our CommsCloud SIM, and the data is running. We're seeing visibility, tire pressures, temperatures for 26 wheels. Everything is going great. That was a Friday afternoon. The Saturday morning, the fleet operator phones me and saying, "Yo, he can't see. He doesn't understand why he can't see the tire pressures. It's about 6 hours behind. Can I perhaps explain what's going on?" Have a look, and I see, well, this sim is not in Cape Town anymore. It's gone across border. It's just across the border into Namibia, and that's where the panic really started. I'm having a look on the CommsCloud portal, figuring out what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. I'm seeing device life, but no data coming through. And that's pretty much where the refinement and the relationship really started to strengthen and grow with CommsCloud. CommsCloud, specifically Peter and Corey, took my hand and said, well, let's have a look at your device settings. Let's have a look at the correct IMSI profiles that you want to deploy and use your SIM cards in. So yeah, it's been a growing relationship. And like I said, we really learned what doesn't work. But eventually we really have a solution that we're happy with, that we know can work across border. Peter, I don't know if you have any comments you want to make on how you saw it all come together for us.
Yeah, what a journey, Francois. I remember the first time you called us. And I don't remember if it was the Namibia ask or just for South Africa, but I do remember the South African only SIMs ending up in Namibia and Botswana and all over the place. It's a really is a common occurrence, actually. So, Francois wanted coverage. He wanted visibility, no matter where his devices were, across the borders, Africa, Europe, or the US for that matter. And sure, it was the cross-border coverage that really drew his attention, or the use case that drew his attention to us. And it's not a simple answer. You'd think it was a simple answer, but the simple answer isn't actually the point. What CommsCloud does that a normal SIM provider doesn't is we operate in the only way that our customers can make sure that all the layers in that ecosystem that we're talking about today actually work together and keep working. You'd think it's a given, right? You'd think it's a given that the installation just works, that the firmware is set up for the whole ecosystem, that the device actually understands how the SIM is behaving on the network from one service provider to another. And obviously, the biggest one is that a single SIM can just get you from Cape Town to Cairo. But it's not a given. And that's the work. You only get to a stable working ecosystem that scales without pain if you do those hard yards that we did with GoMetro together. Extensive testing with Francois and his team in multiple countries. The right IMSI profiles for his corridors in Africa were not the right IMSI profiles for Europe or for the US. Setting up steering to manage cost and coverage, and confirmation that nothing on the device or the SIM interfered with each other's performance. By the time his vehicles were heading into Africa and Europe in the months to follow, the hard work was done. And Teltonica were fitting the right SIM in the right device in Lithuania at production with the right configuration. But the plumbing is not where CommsCloud earns our keep. Underneath it, it all runs on FlowLife's tech stack, the SIM applet, the cloud-native core networks, the FlowLife's operator partnerships across the globe, and their connectivity management portal. I've seen a lot of connectivity management portals in my life. I started in the business intelligence space 26, 27 years ago. And FlowLife is top of its class. It's untouchable. And alongside of that CMP and that infrastructure, CommsCloud built our own SIM manager portal, doing different things, interpreting the complex inputs from the CMP, guiding and instructing the users onto the layer that's malfunctioning, and quickly enabling any user to understand where the issues are, or for our support team to understand where the issues are, and to give the user the ability to make bulk changes to the SIM real estate without moving off of the screen, directly integrated into the Flow portal. Our value, CommsCloud value, is the operator layer on top. We orchestrate the whole thing for scale. We give the clients the visibility. We make the complexity simple to understand. And when something breaks, CommsCloud are the ones that own the answer. We identify which layer to look at. And that's how we got Francois to the point where his device can cross into Africa, wake up in the UK, Europe or the US, and the data just keeps moving.
Great. But connectivity could not solve this on its own, right? So Mindaugas, can you explain what we could configure, what had to change inside the actual device?
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Yes, what is worth to note in this case that I'm from Europe, I'm from Vilnius, Lithuania, and my thinking or our thinking in Europe is that there's more or less no cross borders. If we travel within Europe to other country, my SIM card works to 90% in other countries. So we've been operating as Teltonica Telematics since 1998. And when we started operating in Africa, we brought those beliefs to Africa and thinking, yep, it's gonna go the same way as in Europe. But this was the place where the challenges were hiding. Africa is much bigger than Europe. Africa has its own ecosystem, and those ecosystem words you will hear a lot because Africa does have it. Even each of the countries, Nigeria on its own has completely different operational systems as South Africa does. Tanzania has completely different systems as Kenya does. And only through time spent in Africa with partners such as CommsCloud, GoMetro, Baobab, MTN, we realized that we can manufacture hundreds of devices, but not the device, not necessarily the device is the issue, which will help to resolve the challenge which our customer may face. We had to make our changes, but those changes not necessarily came in the hardware. The hardware still the same. If anyone would look at the box, they would still see the same box. We had to actually change our mentality, our thinking, with the help from Peter. We have done firmware developments. We have done configurational developments. A lot of the hours went into that in order for our hardware to be able to understand that, okay, this is the SIM, this is how it will work, and there's no need anymore of using a different hardwares in the different places. You actually need a correct ecosystem units to be, and by units I mean the hardware, the SIM card, the providers of the actual product for you, and building that ecosystem in the actual place. And talking about those challenges which we have, I would like to come back to Francois. Perhaps he experienced those on the field. As you know, as I said, it's easy for me to say from Europe, from Vilnius, I experienced. Maybe I didn't. Francois, maybe you experienced it more.
Yeah, thanks, Mandugas. So like I said, we're based in Cape Town. We have deployments in UK and Europe, and we also have deployments in Africa. And there certainly is a vast difference between the two. As you mentioned, it is maybe the same device. If you have a look at this black box that's on the vehicle, it's the same device, but there's lots of different complexities to keep in mind. A small thing, but a big thing like installation quality. When people do installation work, you can't just assume that it's done correctly powered. So therefore, you need a robust device that can handle the type of installation work that you do. I think it's also important to separate the complexities of every region, and specifically in Africa. In Africa, you can take it as a given, regardless of what the operator says. If he says, I'm only going to operate this from Cape Town to Durban, you can assume that's not the fact. And he might jump over to Mozambique, he might jump over to Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia. He might run up all the way to the copper belt. That is how they operate. Fleets in Africa move rather quickly. And it's important, I would say, what I've seen compared to Europe is you have to understand the different complexities. So you have a network component, you have a device component, and you have let's call it regulatory or framework for every country. So once you understand the difference between the device type of behavior, so how the device is dependent on how it's installed, the power it gets, the data that it reads, having that as one complexity, having the network performance and capability as the other complexity that you need to keep in mind, you kind of know how, and have being aware of the third part of the complexity for every country, you have the building blocks where you now can analyze, measure, and see how your system performs in one country to the next country. And as it goes from one country over the border to the next country, things like, is there activity on the SIM? Is there no activity on the SIM? Is there data coming through to the SIM? Is there no data coming through? Is the device powered? Can it handle the installation? Is it fused? So it's the hardware world, the network world, and a regulatory world. It's really keeping a close eye on how those components put together and knowing that they're very different to Europe. I've seen that crossing border changes more than just the SIM profile. I think Sahan can do better explanation than what I can do in terms of how it changes the network environment. Over
Yeah,
to you.
thanks, Francois. Look, I think as people said, I think the most important thing to recognize is that Africa is not one operating environment. It's not one homogeneous market. What works on one country in one country or one border crossing might not necessarily work in another border. A truck moving from South Africa to Zimbabwe, Zambia, or further north isn't just crossing a border. It's moving across different network environments, different infrastructure footprints, different regulatory frameworks, different connectivities, different bands. And all of these things are something that we are trying to simplify as much as possible at Baobab, because we believe that connectivity cannot be something you bolt on at the end of the project. It has to be something that is in the solution from day one. So our role here is to try to simplify all of this as much as possible to make that a seamless experience across borders. So how we switch that on our Africa native IPX backbone, how we set up the partnerships and relationships across the continent to enable that seamless connectivity. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a question of, do I have coverage? It should be a question of how can I maintain that continuity, that visibility throughout the journey. This means we have to think about things like multi-network access or cross-border handovers or the switching fabric behind it or the local breakouts. And really it comes down to how we are able to design those networks into redundancy, into simplicity to ensure that the device is connected and that it works seamlessly across the ecosystem. At Baobab, we're focusing on building that connectivity that reflects those realities. And really, we're here to help you and the fleets maintain visibility, continuity as you move across the continent. You know, looking at the bigger picture as part of MTN's Ambition 2030, we really believe that everyone should enjoy the benefits of a modern connected life. And that is how we strive every day to keep that connectivity, to ensure that the truck, Francois' truck, whether it's in South Africa or Botswana, is connected, is relaying so that the truck is seamless across where we go. You know, ultimately, as I said, the opportunity is enormous, but it requires solutions that are designed with Africa in mind. And, you know, while infrastructure gives us that vehicle reach, customers still need that total solution so that it behaves like one managed service. So, Peter, maybe you can explain a little bit about that layer that is on top.
Right, so on. And that's actually the job, right? That's what we do. That's our role. You know, coverage tells you in the rate sheet where a device can connect to, but it doesn't make it behave like a single service. And that layer that we strive to deliver every day of our lives, making it behave like one service is what Comms Cloud strategy is. You can think of it as two different questions. Coverage answers where, and orchestration answers how it stays connected, which profile it rides on at any moment, and who sees and solves the problem when something moves. One of the big pieces that Comms Cloud have brought in the last 6 to 12 months to our analysis tools and our SIM management platform and our client-facing support and client services was a layered approach to the diagnosis, to enable, to spoke about it earlier, to enable people to understand where to look. You know, typically the first call is your SIM's not working, okay? 2G, it's on 2G, it's a 2G device, it's in Australia, your SIM's not working. Yeah, actually, and 200 devices went to Australia on 2G, and Australia sunsetted 2G like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So Baobab brings the reach. Teltonica builds and shapes these devices, and FlowLife powers everything underneath that. The tech stack, everything that we all sit on, right? And to the customer, it's one managed service, one SIM, one point of accountability. But underneath, we unpack in 3 different layers, doing different jobs. And that's how we see our role. If you want to be successful in the connectivity provisioning space, as a IoT connectivity service provider, you need to provide that operator layer, the knowledge and the intelligence that makes those layers behave as one. So we orchestrate that coverage, we steer, we give the clients the tools to measure, manage, and troubleshoot. And we do as much of that work for them as possible until the malfunction is outside of our sphere where we cannot see it. And that's really the technology underneath the service, Francois. So maybe you could share at this point a little bit about what changed for your installers and for your customers from that point on.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Peter. I can say that I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The UK European landscape is completely different to the African landscape. And another example of that is if we install on, so we work on vehicles, trucks, buses, all of that, is when we install on buses in the UK, it's a different setup where we liaise with the operator, we get vehicle availability in the evenings. Our installers can just zip around wherever they need to be, whether it's in London, install a device at the odd hours of the night, but they have time to do the install. In South Africa and Africa, fleet operators, specifically trucks, never stand still. Like your installation window is very short and it needs to be done correctly because if that truck goes, it goes all the way up. So those are real world considerations that make African deployments different or more difficult, where we need to be able to rely on a SIM card and a device setup that just works seamlessly. Whether we pre-prepare the device with the correct SIM card, bootload the correct firmware and config in our offices, ship it to the customer, or even ship the devices with a different setup that they require. Sometimes we get clients saying, I want feature XYZ, but when they get to the vehicle, oh yeah, can you just add this and this and this? That means we need to change something that we didn't plan for. Now, having a correct baseline and visibility and like a reliable visible layer over the device side of things. So I'm talking configuration management and firmware management, being able to see if a device boots up, able to download that firmware, download configuration changes that we send to it, and also on the same time having a reliable view of the SIM card of what's happening on the SIM level. Can I force the device to get a config? Can I force the device to get a firmware? Being able to push the device via an SMS, query certain things. If things aren't looking right, we can query and get answers from the device back. And you need that to be quickly because the installation window is not that large. Sometimes if you're installing lots of vehicles, you really have a limited time frame. Small but major things SIM visibility has been able to solve for us would be specifically things like small installation errors where the power loom is loose to the device. The installer says, I've done installing, can you just commission for us? And we can't see a thing. We can detect, well, there's no activity on the SIM, so there's obviously no power to the device. It's very small things like this that make a big difference. Things like we can see activity on the SIM, but there's no life. Well, that probably points you got the wrong SIM slot installed. It's small things, but big things that we can resolve from anywhere to anywhere in Africa, having remote visibility over and reliable visibility of our device management and SIM management. Peter, you mentioned earlier that there are different complexities that CommsCloud handles. Perhaps you can give us a bit more detail into the background, what happens for me to see, oh, I can see the signaling activity, I can see it's registered on the network from a CommsCloud perspective.
Yeah, Francois, the visibility. So this is the part that usually happens in the dark. That's the problem. A customer or installer needs visibility, and that's what we try and make possible. Every SIM in our fleet, in your fleet, all reports back in one uniform view on the FlowLife CMP. We can see which network each device is on, whether it's pushing data, whether it's gone quiet. So when something goes wrong, outage, a particular network in a country, on a single device, we often see that before the customers do. Because in a typical fleet, they don't need to know where the truck is until they need to know where the truck is. They don't need to see the dash cam view until it's in an accident or they don't know what's going on. And so when something goes, as I said, when something goes wrong, We feel it before the customer often. Our head of support, Stephen, always says to me, Pete, it starts like a trickle and the next moment you're standing under the waterfall. So I can give you some concrete examples of weird stuff that happens with us. A device shows offline on the client's dashboard, but on our network, it's still connected and it's still pushing data. That's common. It happens a lot. We help our clients unpack what's actually happening, which layer is affected, where's the data going to, and why is nothing reaching his dashboard? And to be honest, usually the device is still talking to PhotoWeb. It's online on PhotoWeb, but not on the dashboard. Or the device IMEI is not configured for that particular dashboard or doesn't have a license. Or the really classic one where it ended up in somebody's phone streaming Netflix because they figured out how to game the system. So visibility really matters commercially, not just technically. I use that example of I've lost my train of thought, so just forgive me. So when you don't have visibility and automation and central management, when you can identify which layer is malfunctioning, one problem doesn't become 100 phone calls for us. It means that our clients that GoMetro can grow their fleet without growing the support desk at the same rate. And that's the difference between connectivity you sell or SIM drop and connectivity that you can actually scale tens or hundreds of thousands of devices on. The end isn't the engineering isn't an end in itself, Francois. The real test is what Let's GoMetro and his customers do next.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I would say for me that the big thing is it now takes it from one truck to a scalable solution. As Peter, as yourself, Madugas, and Sahan has mentioned, there are lots of technicalities and complexities to keep in mind for every component and every region. And as critical as it is to know and understand how they form the how and the why of our solution, it's critical to know of them, but it's also convenient to now have that, if I can put it, sorted or figured out, that we now have this robust foundation layer that we can build our telemetry stack on. I mentioned that we have EVs running through Europe. Those vehicles publish about 4 million data points per vehicle per day. Now, that's a lot of data if you compare that to a standard IoT deployment. Now, with the resilience that we've built with the SIM profile switchover, the connectivity understood in Africa and cross borders and throughout Africa, we can now deploy the similar telemetry stack and technologies that we have for the UK running EV buses. We can apply to Africa, to East Africa and Southern Africa, have really data intense solutions running and running with confidence. We can have confidence, the client can have confidence. I think Sahan that mentioned the word ecosystem. I think that's critically important. It's almost like a symbiotic ecosystem where if everybody does their part like they do, it takes the focus off of the companies that don't need to, like we as GoMetro Solutions company know how to integrate devices and manage devices and can focus on the quality of the data that we read and report, while the other partner companies can focus on their strengths and really build strength to strength solutions. So for me, I would say it's scalability. It's the ability to now know we can deploy in scale across Africa. I think I have a limited viewpoint over commercial reality and possibilities in a GoMetro perspective. But Peter, I don't know if you have any viewpoints from your side from a commercial perspective and reality, what this means for Africa.
Yeah, so why don't we bring it back to what a IoT solutions provider in Africa can actually commit to today, or an IoT solutions provider looking to sell into Africa. Today, you can put a single SIM in a device in one country and have it cross borders and keep working. Managed as a single service with someone accountable for when it doesn't. That's not roadmap or slide deck stuff. That's real data from Teltonica customers in Africa. I'll give you a proof point. One of our largest clients in Southern Africa, serious player, right? North of 30,000 SIMs, reduced downtime from an average of 32% on cross-border fleet to under 4% over an 18-month period with CommsCloud's SIMs across 14 countries. The impact on their operational overhead was substantial. I mean, you know, when you're dealing with outages and downtime, you can't sell, you can't install, everybody's just all hands on deck. And we couldn't have done that without the role players in the room. The learnings we had with GoMetro and our other customer bases, other customers in our base, with Baobab growing their footprint and giving us stable IMSIs in Southern Africa, with FlowLive literally reinventing or rebuilding the plane in the air with our SIM applet to manage the layered complexity of the MNOs in Africa. But I'd be doing you all a disservice if I said just ship it. Cross-border is real. It's earned by deployment, by device, never assumed. Three things we always pressure test first. A coverage check. Is there a real network where the vehicles actually run, not just a rate sheet or a map? A readiness review of the device. One firmware change and every single device needs to be retested sometimes. A readiness review of the device and the use case. Make sure that you don't have to fix firmware or install issues in the future. And where it matters, I always say to our customers, a small proof of concept for a month or two before you deliver 2,000 devices into Southern Africa stops the use case from being a risk and ensures it becomes a plan. And that's the point I'm making today. The confidence comes from doing the work before production, checking before you commit, not after, before the first device is installed. But just in closing, I'm sure Mindergas and so on each own a different part on that readiness check. So let's hear from them.
Yes, Mindergas.
Thank you, Caroline and Peter. So what our readiness check look like at Teltonica Telematics? Our devices do need power and some chips and then a lot of smart words. Yeah, so all of them connected and then it works. But jokes aside, I'm going to try to actually focus and show for you what's really important for me as a sales group manager. So whoever can and hear me, with the number 3, please clap. 1, 2, 3. I see Caroline haven't heard me, so she was clapping. But for those who clapped, thank you. You have actually been listening. And listening is one of the key things at our Teltonica Telematics readiness check. As we manufacturing more than 90 different devices, and then we do have 150 different accessories just from our range connecting to our devices, without actual understanding what needs to be deployed within a solution, we would not be able to deploy successfully as many devices as we do now. By all means, there will be challenges. And as Peter says, we must run the POCs. We must run the samples. We must understand what's happening prior we go big scale. And those samples, tests, those POCs, those pilots actually allows us not even us as Teltonika Telematics, but allows for our clients to listen to the challenges that they may experience within going forward by providing the solutions of Comms Cloud, Teltonika, GoMetro, Baobab, and expertise which is being built while we do that, while we test everything and listen to each other, is very, very crucial in our readiness check. We are ready only then when we understand what the actual requirement is. Have it been tested? Is everything working at this moment? And I'll pass on to Sahan.
Thank you. Look, I couldn't really agree more. It's about having the relationships with your customers and your partners to really understand what is the scope of the project. As Francois said, they might tell you it needs to go from Cape Town to Durban, but tomorrow you'll find it in Zimbabwe, you'll find it in Botswana. So what really we need to do as an ecosystem is look at the entire project. From our point of view, we look at the connectivity, the corridor or the stated corridor of the customer. We go a bit deeper to understand, look, this looks like, this customer looks like this profile. So if we expect them to be in these countries, we expect the other product, the other installation to be in those countries. We have to be able to ensure that that corridor that they want to go on is connected, whether it has the multi-network or the capacities or the technical readiness, the switching, all the hidden infrastructure underneath that you don't really see, is what we check when we go into a new deployment, which is why relationships with partners and the ecosystem is really important, because it's that information that is shared clearly and transparently with each other to make sure that the ecosystem works. It makes no sense Mending is selling a device that is going to go to Madagascar if there is no coverage in Madagascar. So it's trying to find what is the clear understanding and building together a solution that is fit for purpose. One of the biggest lessons we've learned on this is that its reliability is far more important than connectivity alone. So it's not whether the device connects on day one, it's whether that device stays connected consistently. And that is what we check before we go into these projects.
Thank you, Sahan. Well, that brings us back to the truck. And Francois, can you give us some advice for anyone entering the African market?
Yes, I can, Caroline. I would say for people wanting to enter the African market, know that Africa is ready for high-tech solutions and deployments in Africa, but you shouldn't be scared and you should choose your partners wisely.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're coming towards the end of our webinar here, but I have one last question that I'll propose to Peter. I'll start with you. Why Africa now?
Why Africa now, Caroline? We see the fleets are moving. And with the free, I forget the acronym for the free trade area, it's the largest free trade area in the world at the moment, right? I think it's like 50 or 49 or 50 countries have signed up for it. And they're building the highways and they're building the logistics. And what's changed, so these corridors are already busy. The fleets are moving, right? The technology is changing. AI wants connectivity everywhere. We see large fleet providers dropping telemetry devices and moving to cameras, okay? But they can't deliver that cross-border without connectivity. But now the connectivity underneath all these solutions out there can finally keep up. Built here for how Africa actually works. So for me, the question isn't really whether African IoT scales. The one astounding fact that I want to share with you today, and I went and checked my figures because I got it wrong when I was preparing, is by 2050, it's predicted that 1 in 4 human beings on the planet live in Africa. So Africa is ready for IoT and for scale. The question is, who's ready when it does scale? And Comms Cloud, our strategy is to be the layer it runs on.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to go to Sahan. So we're just talking. What does it mean to build African connectivity for the long-term scale?
Short, everything. At Baobab, whenever we build something, we believe that the strongest deployments start with a strategy that is designed for scale, resilience, and long-term growth. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not an initial deployment. At Baobab, our connecting Africa, which is our tagline, is really more than a tagline. It's a mission that we are proud to carry out every day. It's what we live and breathe. It's what our DNA tells us to live and breathe. And that's why we're so excited to be a part of this ecosystem.
Great, thank you. Mindaugas, what should a company get right in the device before deployment? I think that was one of the things that really stuck out for me.
In the device, I'll approach it this way. Right partners for right projects, then device will become easy choice. There's many devices, many different projects, even many different manufacturers of those devices. But only the right partners will bring you a visuals, not just cell to cell. It will bring you a visuals of additional value and bring a business towards you and towards your client. So it's not necessarily only about the device. It's about who provides you that device. So that would be my answer to that.
Great, thank you. I think what we've heard today is that operating across Africa comes with real complexity, but those challenges can be managed when the device, the connectivity, the network, platform, and support teams work together as one ecosystems. Companies can really scale with good confidence. I'm going to see if we have any questions. We're going to move on to the Q&A. Not sure if we have any in there.
I think Anna's managing the list for you, Caroline.
Thank you. So just bear with us.
Caroline, I just want to add, I know the question was put to Mindaugas, but I think just something on what he mentioned, I think just as equal as having the right partners or the right solutions in place, I think the knowledge of the correct SIM, obviously fit for purpose and fit for region, but also knowing the correct device for the type of application. I think a lot of people sometimes have a book knowledge or think on spec or according to specifications, this will be the correct device fit for purpose. I think using the correct partners or solution companies that have a knowledge over the devices which actually work better for the type of regulation required, for the type of network connectivity required. Is it Cat1? Is it 2G? Having those knowledge points or like something to draw off of is just as critical. So your device choice is just as important, I would say.
Great. Okay, we do have a question. Oh, we do have one question. Did you want to build on top of that, Peter?
Just 30
Sure.
seconds. And when you choose your device manufacturer, choose somebody like Teltonica who's willing to listen and who very quickly, long before the other OEMs, right, started building for multi-IMSI, multi-core network firmware. And that has really been a game changer for us in Africa. I can't say it enough.
Great. Okay, we do have a question, and I don't know who would like to answer this, but do you support SGP32?
Oh, that's easy to answer. If you don't mind.
No, please do.
Flow Live went live in production in February this year with SGP.32. Up and running. And it's not something to be approached lightly. It's a very complex environment, but if I put it to you briefly, it's available and it's in production.
Okay, great. Looks like we have Let me just ask here. It says, who owns troubleshooting when the device connectivity network and platform come from different partners?
That's again, it's a Comms Cloud own that layer.
Okay.
And we've built our entire business model around that diagnosis, about the ability to quickly allow the user to unpack which layers malfunctioning and where the issues are.
Okay. Well, let's go. I have one question here. What exactly is Teltonica's role in Africa expansion?
Teltonica's role in Africa's expansion, what we are currently doing as Teltonica, as manufacturers, we are opening the different offices in different parts of Africa to be closer to our clients. So as I mentioned in the presentation, the very first office opened in Kenya. And when we opened in Kenya, we started serving surrounding countries in there because we have seen the challenges serving Kenya and surrounding countries from Lithuania. Same happened with South Africa, same happened with Morocco. The next point of expansion where we're aiming to open our office would be Nigeria, because we see the point of pain point, you could say, in there where we can't properly serve the clients from Nigeria, from Europe. So our expansion aims towards Africa is to resolve the challenges for the African clients, which they may have if they would be working with European brands. Let's say as Teltonica Telematics, we do serve whole world from Europe, but Africa has its own ecosystem. We need to adapt to it. And by opening offices, by investing into building new offices in, let's say, Nigeria, where we aim to build that, we are trying to get closer to the customers to reduce their headaches of getting the IoT hardware for their solutions to be provided.
Thank you for that. Okay, we are coming to the end of our webinar. I want to thank our audience for the thoughtful questions. After today's webinar, we'll send you an email with a link to this recording and the presentation. It'll also have our panelists' contact information. We encourage you to reach out to them directly. If you have a question, if you'd like to continue the conversation, or you want to discuss a particular route or deployment, please feel free to reach out to them. We also would love to get your feedback. We appreciate you taking the time to spend this hour with us. So any feedback you can give us that helps us make sure it was worth your while, we'd greatly appreciate. I want to thank our panelists for being here today. I want to thank our audience for participating. And I hope you all have a great, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.